welcome back to another video feature of the Immersive Worlds Handbook. Today I'm focusing on the cultures of Tiki and taking you through Don the Beachcomber in Huntington Beach, California, as well as the International Tiki Market at the same location. Unfortunately, when I was recording this video, my microphone wasn't working, but I was describing to you the excitement I had visiting Don the Beachcomber. So visiting Don the Beachcomber for me was part of a project that I began on the cultures of Tiki. And as you see me walking through the restaurant here, I was particularly interested in Don the Beachcomber because it's one of the more famous of the famous Tiki restaurants, Tiki bars anywhere in the world. And the name Don the Beachcomber recently was relicensed by the family of the originator of the original restaurant. And not unlike other famous Tiki restaurants, Tiki bars, Trader Vic's certainly is one place that comes to mind. Don the Beachcomber has all the trappings that we would expect in a classic Tiki bar, Tiki restaurant. In fact, in 2015, there was some controversy over zoning and permits, and people basically protested and went to city council meetings and saved Don the Beachcomber from what would have certainly been its closure. And if you're curious about that, you could read about the politics of that by just Googling that subject online. But here I'm taking you through some of the interior decor, and I think Tiki for me has been so interesting, has become part of a new research project because so much has been said against Tiki in terms of its decor, in terms of its lifestyle. If you've had the opportunity to read about Tiki, you've probably read a Sven Kirsten book. Very lavish, well-researched, colorful books that detail every aspect of Tiki culture, talking about its ascendancy and its decline, its revival, discussing the decor. And you're actually seeing quite a bit of that here. The rattan, the certain colors, the textures. I'll get into later some of the drinks certainly. But you know, Tiki I think is very distinctive, and as I've been discovering in some of my research, speaking with individuals, including during my trip here to Don the Beachcomber and also through other archival research, I think there's a lot of passion shared by members of the Tiki community, and there's an ability to play with Tiki, to see its playfulness, to even morph it into some interesting realms in terms of surf culture, even some of the Jimmy Buffett parrot head culture that you might recognize you know, through its various manifestations, and even things like hot rod culture. And when I spoke to individuals about this playfulness, certainly they were quite comfortable with it. There was the sensibility that what Tiki is doing is trying to be open. And in my research I've discussed, and you see a little bit here of that surf culture aesthetic from one of the mini rooms of Don the Beachcomber. But in my research I've been discussing this idea of the openness, and certainly when we study subcultures we often say that they do display an openness because they don't want to replicate what mainstream society is doing in terms of not allowing people to fit in just because they don't fit in exactly with the aesthetic or the lifestyle. You see the same thing happening with goth culture, certainly. There's a great film out there you can watch on this subject called Goth Cruise that gets into all the acceptance issues that are part of goth subculture. And of course these are worlds apart, but they do share some things. Here are some of the drinks here, the drink menu. And I think Tiki's acceptance of drawing in various lifestyle tendencies, various aesthetics, and being open to people suggests something about a new emergent form of authenticity that we may begin to speak of. Now the other side of Don the Beachcomber, as you see here, is that it's a very lavish themed space. And I think a lot of people wouldn't necessarily point to Tiki bars and Tiki restaurants, Polynesian restaurants, Polynesian chic type places, or Polynesian pop rather would be the best term for it that many have discussed. One wouldn't think of these as themed spaces, perhaps because of the fact that there is a certain kitsch or camp aesthetic associated with the Tiki movement. Now the second part here of our tour is going to the International Tiki Market, which was held one weekend at Don the Beachcomber as well. Okay, so right now you're just getting a tour here. I'm going through the International Tiki Market, and I discovered that this is held every so often at Don the Beachcomber. There's a small admission fee, and that also gives you $10 credit at the restaurant at down the Beachcomber, which serves Polynesian type fare. And again, as I'll take you through here, this video is not edited, so you can deal with some of the glitches and pauses. But one of the things I think that is quite curious about this international tiki market was how well attended it was. Again, a lot of people there. People seem to be just really excited about this sharing in a common foundation. In my research, I refer to the Tiki movement as the cultures of Tiki, suggesting cultures in the plural. In other research, I've discussed this notion of culture sampling, where basically Tiki, other theme spaces, other movements, including some aspects of historical reenactment communities, lifestyle communities, take bits and pieces of other cultures, perhaps in some cases the most identifiable aspects of those cultures, whether it be material, decor, architectural, lifestyle, performance, and so forth, and basically remix them in new forms of culture. Again, cultures in the plural. My camera's pausing at certain points. I'm taking pictures, and at one point I also get to interview one of the remarkable Tiki carvers, and I asked him quite a bit about how he got into Tiki, and he spoke of Tiki as a bug that bites you, and once it does, he said to me, you know, it's hard to escape it, and this is just I thought a fascinating portrait of someone who was very excited about Tiki, about the lifestyle, about the craft of it. Even spoke of how he had carved some carvings for celebrities in Southern California, which is where he hailed from. Again, this is in Huntington Beach, down the Beachcomber, Southern California. And what I also found fascinating was that so many people were willing to explore new directions for Tiki. So you don't just see the traditional Tiki idol. And again, if you go back to the original Polynesian versions of Tiki in various island cultures, you get the idea of Tiki. These statue figures represent Tiki, the god, or the first man. And what they're doing here in some cases is taking Tiki carving and the aesthetics in entirely new directions, in many cases displaying humor, you know, winking at us a little bit, all the while enjoying the freedom that is provided by the particular lifestyle here of Tiki. And I found this to be fascinating because basically people were willing to explore and experiment and were never taking it so seriously. And I think this also distinguishes Tiki in terms of being a themed space and a themed lifestyle from some other examples that we might look at in the world. Now, if we started to compare the cultures of Tiki to Jimmy Buffett and the parrot head phenomenon, we would see some similarities, I believe. Historical reenactment, we could potentially, in terms of some of the folks who get involved in, say, Civil War or Viking reenactments around the world that don't take it as seriously as what we call the hardcore. The hardcore folks in historical reenactment and also in LARPs or live action role-playing games, such as the ones profiled in the movie Darkon, the documentary, are certainly taking it in a different direction in terms of the seriousness, even the politics of it. And I think that's always going to be a very formative criticism of Tiki, is that it is too light. People also have made accusations that Tiki is a very patriarchal, male-centered aesthetic. If you think about some of the imagery of women, you know, in bikinis and so forth, and maybe the notion of the white male seeking out the dark-skinned woman from an indigenous culture. And those are certainly criticisms, as I've written about in my research, that we have to consider. But at the same time, we have to say that there is something quite playful and interesting and apolitical about what Tiki is doing. Now, here we're walking through actually the second of many rooms at Down the Beachcomber, and there were bars set up, and again, just a very large scale market, and I was quite amazed to see that it was this big. There was another one I haven't had a chance to attend as well, that is in Palm Springs, which also has a very big Tiki contingent. And so as we review here some of the last video that I took at the International Tiki Market at Down the Beachcomber, again, I think the humor, the accusations that have been leveled against Tiki culture all have to be taken into consideration in terms of Tiki's uniqueness. It's really unlike anything else. The Tiki Bar as a theme space is incredibly recognizable, and I think has been one of the most successful themes, albeit, as I said earlier, it's one that is associated with something that is less than serious. But why do all theme spaces have to have a serious aesthetic or serious political bent behind them? Places like down the Beachcomber, as you see here, are also examples of throwbacks, and I think it's going to be unfortunate if we do ever see the day where places like this or other famous tiki bars around the world that have so much history to them and so many stories and so many lifestyle associations, it would be a true tragedy if we lost these incredible opportunities to study theming in this context, to also study the theming as a lifestyle dimension that we also see in tiki bars and in tiki cultures, like at the International Tiki Marketplace. So I hope you enjoyed this video feature focusing a bit on tiki cultures, looking at Don the Beachcomber in Huntington Beach, California, and please come back for additional video features of the Immersive Worlds Handbook.